I'm Corey Costello, and this is TehachaPod's Eye on the Capitol. Eye on the Capitol is an informative look at state and national issues that impact your life in Tehachapi. From new proposals, new laws, and even future legislation, we do the research and pass on that information to you while you go about your life. On today's episode, the California Environmental Quality Act, or CEQA, a required environmental analysis for most projects in California, is now being targeted by state lawmakers as development opponents weaponize the process. Sounds familiar? We'll take a closer look at several bills active on the state legislative calendar seeking to reform CEQA and housing development, while also analyzing the budget trailer bills signed by Governor Newsom that also exempts several projects from this extensive environmental review. Also on today's episode, the announcement of the latest prison closure gives some relief locally, and California is threatening to redistrict, well, outside the normal window and process of doing so based on similar efforts in Texas. As the legislative session rolls on in Sacramento, there are a total of 18 bills introduced by lawmakers seeking to reform the controversial process of the California Environmental Quality Act. This stems from several years of opponents to development projects, both commercial and residential, nitpicking CEQA documents for personal gain. This is resulting in several bills that are aimed at not only gutting the review process, but limiting local control over many projects, especially related to housing, as Not in My Backyard advocates are seeing their work turning against them, leading to potentially more development with fewer chances for legal challenges, especially in the realm of housing, a state-recognized need. First, we start with California's budget approved earlier this year, which included two bills, AB 130 and SB 131, that address several new CEQA exemptions and reforms. AB 130 expands existing CEQA infill housing exemptions to include a broader array of projects on sites up to 20 acres located in urbanized areas. Most exemptions apply to sites that are surrounded by other urban uses, including current or past residential homes, commercial developments, public institutions or public parks, or transportation. To qualify, sites must adhere to the city's general plans and zoning codes and not be located on environmentally sensitive areas or require demolition of historic sites. The only requirement for project studies are consultation with tribal leaders to ensure the site is not of cultural significance or home to any native remains. Cities such as Tehachapi are now required to review and approve these projects within 30 days of completion of the tribal consultation process. It also extends the Housing Crisis Act of 2019 and creates a shot clock, so to speak, to approve or deny an application for a qualifying housing development project within 60 days. Meanwhile, SB 131 creates a number of technical amendments to the CEQA process and introduces its own new exemptions for most rezonings for residential projects within a jurisdiction's certified housing element. It also establishes 9 new CEQA exemptions for new and/or repairs to ag employee housing projects, daycare centers, rural health clinics, nonprofit food banks, so long as they're not located on natural or protected lands. Most advanced manufacturing facilities are also exempt as long as they are located on land zoned for industrial uses. Water system improvements serving disadvantaged communities, wildfire risk protection projects, broadband infrastructure, and public rights-of-way exemptions are also extended to public park projects, non-motorized trails, and certain high-speed rail support facilities. In addition, projects that meet nearly all the requirements of a CEQA categorical exemption but fall short due to one unmet condition also qualify for a streamlined CEQA review in which only the unmet condition is studied and not all of the others that are exempt. In addition, these project types are also not required to include project alternatives in their CEQA analysis or a project's growth-inducing impacts. As far as other bills being considered, SB 73 by Senator Sabrina Cervantes would provide exemptions for residential projects, employment centers, and mixed-use development projects in transit priority areas and those located in very low vehicle traveled areas. They can be exempt from CEQA requirements if they're undertaken and consistent with a specific plan or community plan certified within the last 15 years. Agricultural employee housing projects, affordable housing projects, and housing projects on infill sites can also be exempt if they meet certain requirements that are located within the boundaries of a state conservancy. Residential projects on infill sites must be no larger than 5 acres and within 1/2 mile of major transit stops. The bill has been referred to the Senate Committees for Rules and Environmental Quality. AB 295 by Assemblywoman Alexandra Macedo aims to streamline the review process for certain environmental projects. This bill would apply to water storage, water conveyance, and groundwater recharge projects that provide public benefits and drought preparedness. A lead agency would only be required to prepare a record of proceedings and provide a notice of 10 days of certification. This bill has been referred to the Assembly Committee on Natural Resources for a hearing. AB 317 by Assemblyman Corey Jackson would exempt single-family dwellings from the California Environmental Quality Act under certain conditions. The exemption applies to new construction of single-family dwellings that meet specific requirements, including the dwelling is 1,500 square feet or less with no more than 3 bedrooms. The property is intended to be sold to a first-time home buyer. The lead agency determines that the developer or property owner provided sufficient legal commitments to meet the requirements. If a project qualifies for the exemption, the lead agency must file a notice of exemption with the Office of Land Use and Climate Innovation and the county clerk. The bill also establishes a state-mandated local program by placing additional requirements on lead agencies and local agencies to determine eligibility for the exemption. This bill has already passed the Assembly floor vote and has been referred to the Senate committees on rules and environmental quality. One of the largest housing development bills effectively removes CEQA completely as a result of development opponents weaponizing the process over the years, and now local control and approvals are being completely dismissed as a result of Senate Bill 79, authored by State Senator Scott Wiener. This bill aims to promote housing developments near transit stops to be built with specific height limits, density, and floor area ratio requirements based on proximity to transit. A proposed development must comply with applicable requirements and not require the demolition of housing on the site. The bill also requires the proposed development to include housing for lower-income households and prohibits the development from being located on sites where the existing housing is subject to rent or price controls. The bill provides that a local government that denies a project meeting the requirements of the provisions located in a high-resource area is presumed in violation of the Housing Accountability Act and liable for penalties starting January 1, 2027. The bill allows for streamlined ministerial approval for developments meeting these provisions and authorizes a transit agency to adopt zoning standards for district-owned real property in transit-oriented development zones. Senator Wiener claims building more homes near public transit tackles the root cause of our affordability crisis while bolstering public transportation across the state. California urgently needs to build many more homes to address our shortage and lower the cost of living. By focusing on and building near major transit stores, we can tackle our housing shortage while supporting our public transportation systems with an infusion of new riders. SB 79 has passed a floor vote in the state Senate and has been referred to the Assembly Committees for Housing and Community Development, Local Government, and Appropriations. It's set to be heard in the Appropriations Committee on August 20th. SB 574 by Thomas Umberg aims to add new provision to the government code relating to land use. It would allow development proponents to submit an application for single-family housing developments with each unit being 1,600 square feet or less, and the development consistent with objective planning and design standards for a streamlined ministerial approval process. This would expand the exemption for the ministerial approval projects under CEQA. The bill also imposes a state-mandated local program on local agencies, requiring them to expand their duties. Additionally, the bill provides that no reimbursement is required for the state for certain costs associated with implementing the new provision. This bill remains in the Senate and has been referred to the Committees on Housing and Local Government. SB 252 by Suzette Martinez Valadares aims to exempt projects to underground power lines from the California Environmental Quality Act. Under CEQA, a lead agency must prepare an environmental impact report or mitigated negative declaration for projects that may have a significant effect on the environment. This bill would allow undergrounding power lines to avoid these requirements, as it is determined that the project would not have a significant environmental impact. The bill would also impose a state-mandated local program to determine if a project qualifies for the exemption. This bill remains in the Senate committees but does not have a hearing date scheduled. Other CEQA bills specific to projects throughout the state, wildfire mitigation, and utilities were also presented in this latest session and continue through the process in this two-year legislative cycle. In other news, the latest prison closure rumors have had every institution, including the California Correctional Facility in Tehachapi, on edge as corrections officials awaiting the decision from the governor on which facility would be closing as part of the latest state budget plan. Last week, it was learned that the California Rehabilitation Center in Norco, California, is the latest facility expected to close in the fall of 2026. The city of Norco has been pushing the state to close the facility with a capacity of 2,830 inmates as it sits on a former site of the Lake Narconian Resort, which opened in 1929 and was once considered the opulent playground of some of Hollywood's biggest names. That resort closed in 1940 before serving as a naval hospital prior to the buildings being turned over to the state in 1963. City officials in Norco have supported the closure to reclaim the site as a potential resort and historic hotel. CCI in Tehachapi remains open. However, previous closures of specific wings of the facility remain in effect, although inmate population has increased recently up to 2,424 from earlier numbers as a result of previous facility closures. Tehachapi continues to be an institution that is mission-focused and open to experimental state programs for inmate rehabilitation. And finally, California and the federal government remain at odds over an awkward push for midterm redistricting. An effort started in Texas, with many believing it to be an attempt for Republicans to redraw districts and maintain their control of the House of Representatives. In response, Governor Newsom has claimed he will ask voters to do away with the recently adopted maps that were a result of the California Independent Redistricting Commission in an attempt to counter Texas's proposal. California, like most states, normally redistricts only after each 10-year census, an extensive process that includes several public hearings throughout the state and a variety of district proposals, each subject to public comment. Newsom's proposal would do away with those maps and allow voters to vote on potentially gerrymandered maps that benefit his political party's chance of gaining seats for California in the U.S. House. A recent opinion piece published by Fred Bauer of the newsletter Rounding Up says the resulting action of either state could kick off efforts nationally for redistricting every few years based on party control in Washington, leading to damaging effects of the House of Representatives to represent their constituents when the constituents change every few years. But it also sucks state legislative races into the maw of national polarization. Bauer goes on to say that if perpetual redistricting becomes the norm, every state legislative election could become a proxy for national political struggle. In a country as divided as ours, that doesn't exactly warm the heart. That's the latest from Eye on the Capitol. If you have a question or would like more information about one of the topics covered or have an idea for a future episode, email us at media@TehachapiCityHall.com. Until next time, you keep living up to Tehachapi, and we'll keep an eye on the Capitol.